Hi guys, today we're going to talk about how to use must and have to. Now these are very special verbs because they help us express obligations. Okay, so how do I use it? Let's go ahead and look at the structure. So for these verbs, we're going to start off with our subject. Okay. Then either we use must or have to. And then the base form of the verb of what you have to do. Okay. So an example can be something like, I must eat healthy food. Okay, so here we have our subject. Okay, must, and then eat is the base form of the verb, to eat. And then in this case we have an object. Okay, eat healthy food. Right? Now, we should note a couple of things about these verbs. Is that the verb must doesn't change, does not change. So that means it's the same for all subjects. Okay? It's the same for all subjects. So that means we have, for example, I must, you must, he must, etc. Okay? Now remember that these are used to express an obligation. So if I say something like, she must work on Monday. Okay, so we're talking about an obligation. She has an obligation to work on Monday. Okay? Now, let's look at have to really quick. So as a reminder, the verb have, so you do have to conjugate the verb to have. Okay? As a reminder, how do we conjugate the verb to have in the present? we have singular and plural. And the verb to have is a regular verb, so that means it's going to have two forms only. So it's going to be have or has. Okay. So we have I, you, he, she, it. We, you, they. So we're going to use have for everything except he, she, it. So it's I have, you have, we have, they have, he, she, it has. Okay? So just keep that in mind. When we use have to, you should conjugate it. You must conjugate it. So how do I use have to? It's the same way as must. The only thing that changes is that we have to conjugate it. So if I say something, if I have an obligation to wake up early on Wednesday, I say I. How do I conjugate the verb to have with I is have. So I have to. I have to wake up early on Wednesday. Okay. But what if we have he? Well, if I have the verb, if I have the subject he, then our verb changes to has. Now, something interesting happens is when we use the negative form. Okay? So when we use the negative form of must is must not. Okay? Or the negative form of have to is we're going to use the verb to do. So we use don't or doesn't have to. Okay? But we have to be careful though, because these two are very different. In the way they mean and what they mean. So if we're going to use must not, the meaning is that we have an obligation not to. Okay? So if I say something like, well, he has diabetes, he must not eat sugar. Okay, so again, must will never change. Okay, and here it's the base form of the verb to eat. Okay, so he has an obligation not to eat sugar. He cannot eat sugar. But what if we have the negative form of have to? So what does this mean? It means that you're not obligated to. So it's not an obligation. That means it's okay if it happens, and it's okay if it doesn't. Okay? So, to illustrate that, we're going to say something like, oh, well, she doesn't have to, she doesn't have to wake up early. Early on the weekend. Okay? So when we're negating, we're going to use the verb to do. And we're going to conjugate do with the verb, with the subject here. So in this case, how do I conjugate the negative form of to do with she? Well, it's she doesn't. The she doesn't, and then we have to. Have to will not change because we're only using the base form of the verb after doesn't. Okay, so we have to, and we have the other base form of the verb wake up early on the weekend. The meaning is that it's okay if she wakes up early on the weekend, and it's okay if she doesn't wake up early on the weekend. Okay. Thank you for tuning in, and come back next time for another video. Bye-bye.